Hello, once again, everybody. So tonight's topic. I'm actually recording two at once here. So tonight's topic, though, that's going up tonight, is about the Broly movie and some things that I've noticed. But it's also, in fact, maybe mostly about something else related to it. Now, the Broly movie, I will say this, it looks really interesting to me anyway. The animation looks incredible, top notch. Definitely different from what people are used to, and I think that some people it might take a little bit for them to get used to that. But the way everyone moves and everything feels more fluid. The way everything, I mean, it's one of those things too where it might look kind of, I don't want to say sketchy, because that's a very different term. But it looks kind of like a drawing come to life, and considering the fact that it also kind of looks a little bit more like Toriyama's older, like I don't want to say, well, kind of pre-Cell really, but his older Dragon Ball work, Dragon Ball Z work, definitely pre-Boo, but arguably pre-Cell even. Um, it definitely uh, is awesome to see it kind of animated that way because it almost kind of looks like the drawings have come to life. Wow, that was a really long and drawn out and convoluted way to say that, wasn't it? I'm batting 1,000 already. Uh, but you know me, I don't believe in editing because I'm lazy and don't actually have editing software. So here we go. Um, so I love the animation aspect of it. The sound mixing, especially on the trailer, was incredible. The dub trailer. I do want to say the translations were also pretty good, all things considered. Especially since Funny actually put up a dub and sub trailer side by side, which was nice to see. But I did think it was a little bit funny though watching the watching the sub trailer, and Broly roars, and it actually subtitles in all lowercase letters at the very bottom of the screen in parentheses roars. It's like, okay, but but I mean, I I get that it was subtitled, but it's like I thought this was a translation sub, not a. I mean, I'm not gonna complain though. Anyway, um, it's just kind of funny. But what there are a few things that I noticed in that trailer. One being that I thought it was kind of interesting the way that they found that space pod. Um, and the two Saiyans that found it seemed to be wearing some kind of older Saiyan garb. Specifically, the one on the left had armor that kind of seemed to resemble what Kaba wore. Um, and what Vegeta said the ancient Saiyans wore before they met Frieza, and that was clearly one of Frieza's space pods. So, is that going to show how they came in contact with the Frieza Force and Frieza's Empire? I mean, is it going to be one of those sorts of things? I kind of think so. I kind of hope so. Um, Although you do get there's a lot of ways that could go down, so I ain't going to say that that's a confirmed thing or sure thing. But I do think it's a thing, and looks very interesting to me. Now, another thing that I did notice is there are a lot of like focuses and shots of all these babies in like what seem to be incubators, but there's a few of them together, and so I'm not 100% sure on what's going on there. It almost looked like a lab setting. So well, let's see what's going on there. I've got a theory behind that, which I'll kind of get to in a second. You'll have to forgive me because I'm really not trying to go in depth on this. I don't have a lot of info yet, and this is all speculation, and I don't like to try to get too deep into speculation, lest I kind of might find myself, completely married to it. I don't want to do that because then What I find is when you get married to your expectations or your theories, that a lot of times when they don't happen, you do kind of get a little more upset. That's also, though, why I get very upset when people say that I just didn't like X, Y, or Z because my fan theory or whatever didn't come true. It's like I specifically try to avoid those for that reason. Certainly avoid all attachment to them. Like, I could be completely wrong about something going into a movie, and so long as it's still a good movie, I'm going to love it no matter what. But similarly, even if I'm 100% right on my theory and it was a theory that I wanted to see happen and the movie's bad, I'm going to hate it. Now, what I can't help but wonder here, and this is kind of a leap in logic, I'll admit, but, like I said, this is very early. I don't have a lot of info, and I am kind of trying to talk a little bit about the Broly movie itself before I get into the main chunk of the topic here, is that thing that Broly has around his neck when he first gets off the ship. I've noticed that when he's fighting with it, like, he's able to fight Vegeta in base, Vegeta in Super Saiyan. He is then able to fight Goku in various Super Saiyan forms, including Blue, still in what seems to be his base form, if you could call it that. Although the hair does go up like Super Saiyan, but that's whatever. But I can't help but notice that that's there. And then later, when you see him like rising up out of the ground in that green pillar of energy there with his eyes glowing red, which is a very weird thing. It's gone. It is visibly, noticeably missing from around his neck. And I can't help but think, between that and the babies in the test tubes, and, I'm questioning whether or not Paragus is his father or his, father. You know what I mean? What I'm basically saying is, I'm sure he might also be like his birth parent, maybe, but I think Broly might actually be something he considers more his creation than his son. And what I mean by that is, I can't help but wonder how much of that, whether it was on Frieza's command, which it might have been, because heck, uh, the whole thing with him showing up seems to be in Frieza's ship. I can't help but wonder how much of that, is basically Frieza wanting better soldiers and their attempt to create one. What I'm basically saying is, I can't help but wonder if Broly wasn't basically experimented on to try to create the ultimate Saiyan, as it were. Whether he was meant to be a weapon against Frieza to get their freedom, whether he was meant to be, just a weapon for Frieza, I don't know. I really don't know. But it just seems to me that that's the case, because when he's got that thing on, it's like he can use his power and just tap right into it, and it's like, okay. And he's obscenely strong, yeah, but it's like when he loses that, suddenly he's getting even stronger, and you see him rising up out of this pillar of energy, and his eyes are glowing red. The thing that was around his neck is just gone. And he just seems to be unleashing like really high, unstable amounts of energy. And I can't help but wonder if that wasn't a regulator. Like, kind of like, I don't want to say like what Paragus had in the original Broly movie, because I don't think it's some sort of like mind control regulator or anything like that. Basically, what it is it kind of keeps Broly sane and keeps him stable, keeps his power stable. He can use it without it destroying him. But I think that what's basically going to happen here is that Broly is essentially going to be done in by his own strength. It's going to get overwhelming, be unable to control it, etc. And then, kind of, and especially the way they frame it with Goku, the Tournament of Power opened my eyes. There's no way I can stay at the level I'm at now. And it's like, you're one of the strongest people in the multiverse. What's going on here? I can't help but wonder, if this might not be a parallel or a cautionary tale, in terms of what Goku might be willing to do in pursuit of strength, or how just, mindless pursuit of strength will eventually destroy you. I don't expect it to, like, completely shake him from his desire to improve himself or anything like that, just to kind of ground him. And that could also tie into how and why, he's suddenly interested in some, I can, It's really complicated, and I really don't want to go into why. I think it could tie into the end of Z, especially since, again, I don't want to get married to this idea. But I can see it. I can definitely see it. Now, the other thing that I can kind of see is there's a scene, all right? I see this in the fandom right now. There is a scene in the trailer in which Broly, or not Broly, a baby, it's unknown what baby, seems to be putting its hand against the glass, trying to touch the hand of an adult. And it's obviously a Saiyan space pod. They're obviously wearing Saiyan armor. And I've seen a lot of people suggest that this is sort of a quote-unquote flashback scene to Baby Goku being sent off the planet, a la Dragon Ball Minus. And especially since one of the things that I've heard, anyway, from various other people, Geekdom included, is supposedly, according to this information that got released, they may be sort of showing and contrasting the ways that, Vegeta and Goku and Broly sort of, grew up, were raised. How they came to be who they, part of how they came to be who they were. But also, how despite, this advantage or this disadvantage or what have you, this is where they wound up. But honestly, a lot of people seem to be mad about the idea of Dragon Ball Minus being included, and I see a lot of people really bag on that chapter and try to act like it never happened. It's bogus, we don't talk about that, etc. They treat it like the black sheep of the series somehow. And given Toyotaro's manga, I really don't know how you can consider Minus to be something subpar, especially if you shield for that. But I digress. I just kind of wanted to give my thoughts on the whole Minus thing. Dragon Ball Minus specifically. I've noticed that there are a lot of people who seem to diss that, hate it, etc. And I just feel like I should address that. Alright, I would like to state one time, though, before we get going for the record, if you do hear noise out there, I'm sorry. Again, I am still staying with someone at the moment, and, life goes on for them. Just because I'm recording it, don't stop. So, alright, now, one of the things that I see the most that people complain about with Minus is that somehow, well, first of all, they try to act like it's objectively inferior somehow to the Bardock special. It's not. It's really not. It may not be as fleshed out as the Bardock special. That one I will give you. But objectively inferior, no. That is your opinion. You are welcome to an opinion. Right or wrong, free country and all that. But this weird idea that if you somehow like Minus, you're weird or an idiot or something. Like, every time I say that I like that, I people, drop their jaw and stare at me. And for the life of me, I cannot figure out why. But, yeah. And part of that comes from Bardock and his depiction and this weird idea that somehow Bardock is like a good guy. Now, like a good Saiyan or something. He's not this bloodthirsty killer or savage anymore. He's a quote-unquote good guy Saiyan. And that was, and that therefore they're trying to say that that's the reason Goku is too, and it removes everything that was special about him. And yet at the same time, they will then turn around and say that somehow it makes him even more special because he was specifically chosen to be sent off for whatever reason, like Superman, to protect the planet. And every time I hear this, I really have to wonder if anyone, and I do mean anyone, actually read Dragon Ball Minus, because Bardock, first and foremost, in the very opening scene, is actually shown in the process of committing genocide, trying to, wipe out a planet and conquer it for Frieza. It's that simple. he is still a Saiyan. He still does what Saiyans do. He does the Saiyan do. It's really that simple. I I it I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself. I'm in a loop here, but it's just it really is that simple. He is still killing people. You know, he is still just because what he doesn't act like, oh, you know, I have no time for X, Y, and Z, or oh, I'm never going to show any kind of emotion until I'm about to die. You know, that doesn't mean that he's suddenly a good guy. I, I, I mean, maybe he's less bad per se by their standards, but I mean, he's far from unique. There were a lot of Saiyans who did sort of get outcast because they didn't, you know, like his wife even. You know, she is an outcast. She has a distaste for fighting, no particular skill at it. You know, she's not especially gifted as a fighter. So as such, she's kind of an outcast in Saiyan society. She has to stay behind, do menial labor. You know, feed the warriors, tend to the warriors, take care of the warriors. She doesn't have that luxury of, you know, being able to go out on these glorious missions and, you know, and frankly, she doesn't really want it. But as such, she's kind of looked down on. So Bardock, you know, and Bardock, how do I say this? Being monogamous? Seems to be somewhat unique in Saiyan culture. They don't really form any kind of bond like that. So for him to have mated with Gine and stuck with her is kind of interesting. But you know that also implies, oh hey, you know they don't ever fall in love, and here he is. No, that's not the case. It's just rare. Um, the thing that I don't get is, you know, because he shows some care for whether or not baby Goku there, baby Kakarot dies, he's somehow automatically a good guy. That's not the case. You know, I'm sure that Nazi generals cared for their children too. You know what I mean? Um, that doesn't mean that they didn't commit some terrible atrocities. Now, to further that point, Gine even specifically says that it's really not like him to care for his kid. You know, it's just not a trait that's really prevalent in him. He says that it's because, well, you know, you being a softie, it's rubbed off on me a little bit. Now, first and foremost, I want to say that kind of implies that it's a recent development in him. You know, so it's not like it's a very frequent or often seen trait even. But just something in him, you know, he didn't trust that, and he didn't want to see his son die, and not just his son, by extension his race, his people. He does not want to see them die. So, what's he do? He sends him in a pod and sends him off into space toward Earth. Now, what I don't get further is this idea that this somehow makes Goku less special than being a baby sent to Earth to destroy it, or more special than a baby being sent to Earth to destroy it, but winding up its protector and other such parallels. And it's like, I don't get it, because in the Bardock special, you know, Goku is a very special child in that Goku is basically prophesied to fight Frieza. You know, Bardock can see the future. Bardock can see Goku's going to fight Frieza, and that's, you know, something that's basically what gives him his moment of I'm okay with this, you know, and why he's laughing. Because in the end, they're supposedly going to have the last laugh, but even then, he's seeing visions of Goku fighting these people beforehand, you know, Vegeta and everything else, and I mean, and all because some alien on one of the planets they conquered managed to survive long enough to tap him on the back of the neck, and somehow bestow their gift upon him, and it's also their curse, because he will see their destruction coming and be unable to stop it. And it's like, I can't help but wonder, though, first and foremost, if they could see that coming and they were unable to stop it, why didn't they evacuate or leave? I don't know. That was just something that always bugged me when I was a kid, but that's beside the point. It's how in the world would he have seen the end of the Saiyans, Like, if that gift allows you to see the end of all things, then why couldn't he see, like, the end of this or the end of that? Or, how did he know that that was going to be a curse to Bardock? And how was he inside his head? And all that kind of stuff. If it was a mind transfer, that's kind of cheesy as hell. But either way, and then Goku, again, being sent to be the destroyer. And then because of one fateful moment, he suddenly became its protector. That is a pretty special thing, and his fight with Frieza was foretold, and so on and so forth. In Minus, he's just a kid whose dad got a little worried about why in the world Frieza would mysteriously just call them all back there and sit there hovering above their planet waiting, and he's an experienced fighter. He can sense that there's something off here. This feels like a trap. There's death in the air. And that's why he decides, no, I'm getting my son off this planet. My other son is off this planet. I'm getting this one off. Fine. And that's it. There's nothing special about it. There's nothing unique about it. He's a refugee. That's it. Literally it. He's jettisoned off the planet so that he doesn't potentially die should Frieza betray them, like he's a little, it's that nagging worry in the back of his head. And if it turns out to be nothing, and he did it for nothing, he will go find him later, use the scouter, pick him up. There you go. That's simple. Now, I know a lot of people like to say that that does fly in the face of what happens in the manga, too, and I do just want to say that Raditz very specifically says that, Goku was sent there as an infiltration baby. And and what an infiltration baby does. And the thing is, Raditz kind of does think that. Because they needed an excuse to be able to have sent Goku off the planet, and they're going to track that pod and notice, hey, one of them just left. Frieza's not going to care about some baby that's going to be stranded on some backwater planet. There's a 50-50 chance that baby might die. Okay, what happens, too, is that as sort of a rite of passage, especially if you are a low-level Saiyan, if your fighting power is especially weak, you would be sent to a planet in which you were supposed to essentially survive and claim a minimal body count. This was something that Toriyama kind of provided in order to basically earn the right to come home. If you failed at that, you either died or you came home kind of in disgrace and you became an outcast, a la what happened to Gine. So, when Raditz shows up and he talks about Goku, he should have had this done by now with the people on that planet having those kinds of power levels, and especially with the full moon, and what happened to your tail, and rather interestingly enough, the very specific body count that he demanded he produce for him. Raditz was essentially trying to force his little brother to go through that rite of passage so that he could come home. Because if he was sent there as an infiltration baby, that's his rite of passage for him to rejoin them. Which I actually think is kind of an interesting touch. Look, I'm not gonna... okay, here's the thing, and here's what I hate it when people won't give Toriyama credit for things. It's like, no, Toriyama obviously did not have that plan from the get-go. That's patently obvious. And I hate it when people say that because that clearly wasn't planned from the get-go, that's hackery, because it's not. Because what that is him expanding on his lore and finding a way to make it still tie into what we saw. And, I always did wonder, why did Raditz, want a specific body count, a minimum of X amount of people before he'd, accept him and allow him to come with them? Why was that thing? Why was that a thing? Before he'd let his son go too, what have you. Why was he trying to force him to go through that, to do that? And then you find out it's a rite of passage, and in a really twisted, kind of gross way, it was him trying to basically get his brother to have some pride in himself, ability to have pride in his brother, make him a full-fledged warrior instead of some kind of pathetic weakling. that sort of thing. But I mean, in the end, and yes, why would he still think that? Gine told him that, and why would Gine tell him that he's an infiltration baby? Well, like they specifically show earlier in that chapter, take your scouter off; they can hear you. The only way she has to call Raditz though is on the scouter, which means Frieza's going to hear. So what's she going to tell him? Something that Frieza can hear and won't be an issue. Not, we sent your brother off to another planet because we thought Frieza's going to kill us all. No, it's, your brother was chosen to be an infiltration baby and sent to a planet called Earth. And that's how Raditz knew he was there, and that's why Raditz would go there to pick him up. It's really that simple. This is not rocket science, guys. Okay? But one other thing that I will admit is a bit confusing, and I mean, it really some basic logic kind of hammers this one out, but I can understand initial confusion. Is this belief that, because it says that Goku's been in that incubator for almost 3 years, that he's a toddler, he's a full 3 years old by the time he arrives on Earth. But but the thing is, even after Minus was written, which Toriyama does take into account apparently, still, Goku's birth year was exactly the same. All right, and Bulma, who's about 4 years older than Goku, was 5 in the Jaco manga, which means that Goku was only about a year old, a little over probably, when he came to Earth. So he's still, well, technically an infant, so that's not an issue. And it's still very plausible that, Gohan would still carry him around at times, and it's still very possible that he could have fallen and still struck his head, which would explain the extreme change of personality, and also why he may not remember his birth parents. I see a lot of people say that he gets a really good look at them, and it's like, first of all, talking about an infant getting one good look at people one time, it would be at best a very distant memory. But second of all, if you hit your head hard enough to completely change your personality, well, and that's the other thing too. Goku still hits his head to get that personality change. That's a thing. Which means that no, Goku's not a quote-unquote good Saiyan because his mom and dad were quote-unquote good Saiyans. Not at all. Goku still had that aggression, that desire for conflict. The desire to prove himself better, and it wasn't until he conked his head he lost that. That's not something that changed because of Minus. In fact, very little actually changes because of Minus. Some people say that it changed Bardock confronting Frieza. No, it didn't, because that's in Toriyama's Dragon Ball manga. That's not something that was exclusive to the special, like some people seem to think. In fact, that's actually all of Bardock that was canon before Minus. And I know some people are going to wince when they hear that word. I'm sorry, yes, Toriyama does have a canon. And I am going to talk a little bit about canon versus, everything being official at some point down the line. And why I think that there is a canon and why I think that doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't other official things. But I digress. That was the only time in Toriyama's work, in Toriyama's continuity, that we ever saw Bardock. A lot of people assumed that because he was in the manga that the special was canon, and that's simply not the case. Beyond that, though, yes, it says 3 years there and yet 1 year on Earth, and there's this really simple reason that could be the case. Years on planet Vegeta are shorter than they are on Earth. It'd basically be the same thing as what was on Namek, their Dragon Balls took a year to recharge, but here on Earth that was like, what was it, 100 some days, 130 days, something like that, as opposed to 365. Their years were shorter. It's presumably then the same on planet Vegeta. About 3 years there is a little over a year here, and you see that with the planets in our own solar system. A year here is shorter than a year on Mars or Jupiter, but longer than a year on Venus or Mercury. if you're judging a year by a complete revolution around the sun. So, to me, no, I don't. It's not really a hard thing to follow. I think that it's not even a leap in logic at all because there's precedent in real life and in the series itself. So, yeah, I don't see why Minus gets the hate it does. I get preferring the special. I get some people do prefer the special, and I understand that, and I get if you like that better than Minus. But to act like Minus is some kind of embarrassment or stain on the franchise is frankly ridiculous. And the fact that I see so many of these big people in the community actively take a crap on it and bandwagon it for all the reasons that I've just, kind of taken a look at here, is kind of embarrassing. Like, I'm embarrassed that they would do this. Because it's not something that's terrible. I mean, there are far, far worse things that have appeared in Dragon Ball, unofficial or otherwise. So, this weird idea that that's the black sheep. When, again, things like Toyotaro's manga keep going. When things like GT are a thing. That will never not be a thing that I just scratch my head at. But anyway, that's it for this one for now, you guys. Let me know what you guys think down below. If you got any questions, I'll try to answer them. If you think that you've seen an issue with what I've said, I'm willing to discuss that with you too. Again, there's some other stuff that's supposedly been confirmed about by some people about the Broly movie. I will say that I don't want to talk about some of that just because, number one, I need context first. I don't like going off about stuff without all the details. So for all you people asking, oh, Vegeta's got Super Saiyan God now, what do you think about that? I need to see how he has it and why in the movie. If it's the same thing as what Toyotaro did, just hand waving it, it's gonna be so frustrating because, ugh. I mean, Vegeta has gotten so many handouts when it comes to power-ups, and that's another topic for another day. But my God, but I don't want to go off about that unless and until I have all the facts. There are other things that have been, leaked to certain people via sources that I don't want to go too deep into, because, all we have is their sources, and I get that they trust their sources, but me, I kind of like to verify things officially first, or do my best to. And honestly, all I would be doing is kind of regurgitating something that they've already said, probably a lot more articulately and without, playing the whole telephone thing where I misheard something or misunderstood something and wound up changing it. So, that kind of stuff, there are channels that do that, who do have those sources. Go follow them. I'm sure that they wouldn't be telling you this stuff either. Well, some of them. One of them, I know for a fact, wouldn't be telling you this stuff if he didn't at least think there was some sort of veracity to it. But anyways, that is it for now, guys. And I will catch y'all tomorrow, where we will talk about the current state of Spider-Man comics, which will lead into, later on, my big video on Spider-Man as a whole. See ya. Hello once again, everybody. So tonight's topic